expected.
So here we go, getting ready for the final of the men's 60-meter hurdles. Deshaun Williams from Albany in lane 1. Jameel Adams from Syracuse in lane 2. Naseem Smith from Cuse in lane 3. Ramon Sosa unattached in lane 4. Samuel Bennett from Harvard in lane 5. Tyler Garland from the Orange in lane 6. Christian Brown from Princeton in lane 7. And Taraj Whitfield in lane 8. Bennett, Adams, and Smith all won their heats in the preliminary round. Christian Brown in lane 7, also a member of the Princeton football team, the Ivy League runner-up last year. Deshaun Williams in lane 1, already with a PR today. 8.19 in the preliminary. They are off. Bunched up at first, now starting to separate. It's going to be a photo finish, and right at the end, Tyler Garland, with a little thrust of the shoulders, wins it with a time of 7.98. That one was really close coming off that final hurdle. But over the last few meters, it was Garland who pulled away. Samuel Bennett from Harvard at 8.03. And Adams, also from Syracuse, rounding out the top 3 at 8.06, just barely beating out Deshaun Williams at 8.07. And then he really close again with Smith from Syracuse at 8.08. So 3 through 5 separated by 1/100th of a second each. In just a moment, we will send it down to Connor, who is with Shade Meeks, who won the women's weight throw. We'll get to that at the conclusion of this final heat of the men's 60. Jordan Davenport, Justin Peters, Zaire Wilson, Sean Stairs, Dominic Jack, and Khalil Wassell, in this heat. The top seed time goes to Justin Peter at 7.01. He's in lane 3, off to a lead, but coming in right next to him, Jordan Davenport, and Wassell came in late. That one was close. Davenport does take it from Syracuse, 7.06. Wassell just 2/100ths of a second behind, so your teammate there, Samir, just barely beaten by Davenport from Syracuse. Final heat coming for the men's 60-meter dash in the preliminary round. And again, Chiabuka Onwuzurike from Boston University in lane 2, someone to keep an eye out for. Seed time of 6.82. The only seed time that's better is Colin Fullen from Harvard. The first year from Houston, Texas, is in lane 4. And again, Nicholas Smith, the other Terrier who I mentioned earlier who could compete here, is in lane 8. They are off. A good start up the middle for Fullen. Blake on the outside, but Fullen blows him away.
Colin's been running great this year in his first year here, and he's already picked up a collegiate win prior to this meet. And a cool story about Colin, too, is he was offered a recruiting spot here, but chose to apply separately. And he got into Harvard off his own merit anyways, and has still decided to continue with track and field anyways. And so he's a great both academic and athletic talent. He's continued to prove that in both mediums.
A dominant performance, 0.15 difference between Fullen and Blake. And then after that, it wasn't much of a competition until you got to that 3rd, 4th, and 5th spot. So Fullen and Blake come in at the top 2. Onwuzurike was scratched. He actually did not end up running in that preliminary round. Second heat coming up, Sean Glass, Charles Lego, Neil Casimir, and Monte Parker. 3 different schools represented: UMass Lowell, Harvard, RPI, South Florida. And Neil Casimir is a guy to watch out for. Again, RPI in Division 3, but Casimir could challenge some of these D1 guys. 50.36 but his seed time comes in at 48.18, which is best among this heat. He's in the red in lane 5. On the outside with the early lead is Monte Parker, but that will change once they start to bend in. Gets the early advantage being on the outside, and now it starts to even out a little bit. Casimir currently in third. Monte Parker still in the lead. And now Casimir starting to make his push. Moves around Sean Glass of UMass Lowell. And now it's about catching Parker, who has started to separate himself from the competition as we approach one of the final bends. Parker still in the lead. Casimir's deficit continues to grow. He will most likely get second because it is Monte Parker from South Florida, just a freshman, who takes the second heat of the men's 400-meter dash. Casimir did in fact get second by just a few ticks of a second. And Monte Parker takes it for South Florida, the freshman from Plantation, Florida. So you obviously have some experience with Maxwell Brown being one of your teammates. What does he bring to the table in this 400?
Maxwell's an incredibly talented athlete. I believe he ran either 49 or 50 in high school. He ran incredibly fast. He's from the state of California. Besides being a fantastic athlete, he's a great asset to the team. The guy's hilarious. He always has something funny to say. I could see him emerging to one of the top sprinters on the men's side of the sprinting team. So
Joey Hinckley is not running, so that leaves it as Maxwell Brown, Cameron Duffield, and Leighton James. The best seed time among them goes to Leighton James from RPI at 51.41. And it is James leading as we approach the conclusion of the first 200. And still holds the lead as he bends in. Cameron Duffield behind him, with Maxwell Brown trailing at the moment. Duffield starting to make that push as we approach the final bend in this last 100 meter. Neck and neck, shoulder to shoulder, Duffield along with James. It's going to be close. Duffield pulls away and takes it.
All right, Ben. Well, I appreciate your time, man. Best of luck moving forward, and I hope you get the three-peat here next year this time. Anthony, back to you.
Thank you very much. Benjamin Viau, the champion today in the men's weight throw. His dad, Jocks, ran track at Millersville, so coming from a track-oriented family. All right, Samir, you must be excited now. We are finally underway for the women's mile. Relatively small field in terms of the women's mile, but nonetheless, we are finally underway in more of the distance racing.
Yeah, for sure. It should be interesting to see how the pace plays out the first few laps. Some people are aiming for a qualifying time, or some people are aiming for the win. I think the strategy will be vastly different.
What are some things you're looking out for here as we are through the first lap? Still quite a ways to go, but what are some things you're looking out for, some different strategies, how the athletes might be pacing themselves?
In particular, a variety of things work within the first lap. Some people work well front running, as we can see from our leaders, but a lot of people also do well off a conservative first lap and saving the energy reserve for moving up in the second and third lap, which honestly, positioning is the most important aspect of winning the last 400 to 200 meters of the mile race.
Only Florida Atlantic, Ottawa, and UAB are participating today. That's University of Alabama at Birmingham. Again, the Scarlet and White Invitational tomorrow features more distance races, which could be holding back some teams who might save some of their runners for tomorrow when you have a more plethora of events that you could potentially work some athletes in, whether it be the 1,000, 1,500, mile, 3,000 meters. So a few more events tomorrow that athletes might be plugged into, but for today, only 3 teams participating.
Now, the other thing that's pretty typical, too, is in terms of strategic racing, a lot of people will try and sit back behind someone the first few laps to let them take the win, because the most amount of work is done by the person in the front. And that's not like a psychological thing. It physically takes more energy out of your body to go against that first set of wind, and they essentially break the wind for everyone else. So the girls you see more so in a pack, kind of behind 1 or 2 runners. That could be a strategic move in terms of saving that energy reserve. And maybe that's why they're waiting to strike later on in the race.
So one name that is right in the middle of that pack is Madeline Kapler, who was a cross-country conference USA third team selection this year in the fall. Doesn't have mile experience this year, but certainly a name to watch as someone who excels in long distance. But when it comes to cross country and then checking him here at the mile, obviously cross country a little bit more distance related. How does that compare in terms of the pacing, in terms of the longer distance in the cross country to what you'll experience in the mile?
It's quite different. Although they both fall into the category of long distance, the mile is more so a lot more dependent on your speed. And so you can see quite a difference between the people who succeed at the mile versus people who succeed in cross country. But that cross country aerobic capacity and endurance certainly carries over into the mile. And so it's very easy for people to carry that over. But it seems like our leader right now has a very convincing lead.
Haley Pilati from Jacksonville is all over the competition. Last year she won the mile at Harvard with a sub-5 4:52.03. The only participant from the Dolphins, Haley Pilati, has a sizable lead. And she is approaching her final lap. Last year, again, 4:52.03 for Pilati, and she is on her final lap. Crossed her final at 4:21.53.
Looks like she has a lot more in the tank.
She is going to win this by a wide margin. Everyone else is competing for second and third at this point. Coming around the final bend, Haley Pilati has won at Harvard for back-to-back seasons, and she blows out the competition. 4:55.61. About 3 seconds above what she ran last year at Harvard. But Haley Pilati, for the second consecutive season, the Livonia, New York native, comes to Harvard and wins this year at the Crimson Elite. That was just dominance from start to finish. It was packed for a while, but then after that, Haley Pilati just blew away the competition. The next closest was 10 seconds behind.